Today, we're going way beyond that label to dig into the incredible and surprisingly complex science of food trust.
I mean, think about it. The food on your plate has been through a lot. It's been processed, it's been transformed, and chances are it's traveled across the world to get to you. So with a journey that complicated, the real question isn't just what the label says, it's what's actually in there.
And this is where things get really interesting. On one side, you've got the claim on the package, but on the other side, you have the molecular signal, the food's unchangeable biological fingerprint, something that's locked right into its DNA. Science is what lets us see the difference between the two. So, here's the bottom line. A label is just information, but information is not the same thing as verification. See, anyone can print a claim on a box, but proving it, that takes something that can cut through all the noise, and that something is molecular science. Okay, so let's dive into that promise. We have this absolutely incredible scientific power to see deep inside our food. But what's so fascinating is that this power, well, it actually reveals a much bigger, much more human problem. And here's that promise in action. Using DNA, scientists can pinpoint the true biological source of pretty much any ingredient. It doesn't matter if it's been cooked or ground up or mixed with a dozen other things. That biological fingerprint, it's still there. It's a seriously powerful tool for verification. Which leads to a really interesting question, doesn't it? If we have these amazing scientific tools, why is food fraud and safety still such a huge challenge? If we can literally see what's inside, what's stopping us? And the answer is, well, it's both simple and incredibly complex. The real challenge isn't the technology. We don't need a better microscope. The real challenge is building trust. It's about figuring out how we take that raw scientific data and turn it into a system that everyone everywhere can actually believe in. And this is where building that trust gets really tricky. It brings us to something called the interpretation gap. Because, a scientific result isn't the end of the story, it's just the beginning. And in that gap between getting a result and making a decision, things can get pretty complicated. Now, this might sound kind of counterintuitive. We all think of science as absolute. The same evidence should always give you the same answer, right? Well, what's so wild is that in the world of food integrity, that's just not always the case. And this table just illustrates it perfectly. Look at this. You can have two different labs test the exact same sample. But Lab A sets its detection threshold here and calls it a pass. Lab B sets its threshold a little lower and calls it a fail. Or maybe they use different sampling methods or different analytical models. All of a sudden, the same food gets two totally different verdicts. You see, every single one of these things is a human decision. What threshold is safe? What's the right way to take a sample? Which methods are we going to accept? These aren't just scientific facts. They are layers and layers of interpretation that we apply after the science has done its job. This forces us to ask a much, much bigger question. It's no longer just, can we detect this? The real question we have to answer is, how do we all agree on what detection actually means in the first place? Because without that agreement, we're not creating clarity, we're just creating more confusion. So let's say we solve that interpretation problem. There's still another huge hurdle: time. It's one thing to get the right answer, but it's another thing entirely to get it when it actually matters. This is what we call the speed gap. So the old way of doing things is just slow. It's this long, linear process. You take a sample, you ship it off to some big, centralized lab, you wait for them to process it, analyze it, and then finally interpret it. I mean, this whole thing can take days, sometimes even weeks. And here's the massive problem with that. By the time that lab finally emails you the result, that batch of food could already be on a store shelf. Or maybe it's in a shipping container halfway across the ocean. The moment to actually do something about it is long gone. So naturally, technology is racing to close this gap. We're seeing this fundamental shift away from those slow central labs and toward these rapid portable platforms you can use right there in the field. Suddenly, you can get an answer in minutes, not weeks. And this is so, so important. Because food integrity problems don't happen in a sterile white lab. They happen out here in the real world, in messy supply chains, at busy border crossings, on loud factory floors. That's where you need the answers, and you need them now. Okay, so we've got the tools, and now those tools are getting super fast. Problem solved, right? Well, not quite. this actually reveals the final and maybe the toughest piece of this entire puzzle, the alignment challenge. Just think about it for a second. If everyone is testing super quickly, but they're all using their own different rules and thresholds, you don't actually get clarity. You get a whole new kind of chaos. Fast answers are totally useless if they can't be trusted across the entire system. And the solution to that is standardization. But hey, don't think of this as just some boring technical document. It's more like a system of agreement. It's a shared framework that makes sure a test result in one country means the exact same thing in another. It's about creating a common language of trust. So you can really see how the entire conversation is evolving, right? We've moved past the simple technical question of whether we can detect something on a molecular level. The focus now is on alignment. It's about getting everyone, labs, companies, regulators, all playing by the very same rule book. And really, this is a much bigger shift. It's a shift away from focusing only on what science can do in a lab